Hey, fellow traveler. Welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, a show where we talk all about spiritual and psychic awakening, magic, the shift from 3D to 5D, star seeds, ascension, multiple timelines, multiple dimensions, the universe, the multiverse, the Akashic records, all the good things. I am your host, Amy Belair, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Okay, let's do this. Hi, beautiful soul family. Welcome to a surprise solo bonus episode of Third Eye Awakening. Truthfully, this is take number 11, so we'll see if I can actually get through it this time. I have some things on my heart that I need to share with you and some things that I would like to invite you to. Okay, so truthfully, the reason that I've been struggling to record this episode is because the message is a little dark, and I I'm so I'm still probably the mother in me, I just I love everybody. I don't want to fill your hearts with fear. I don't want to be a contributor to the lowering of the frequency. I want to raise the frequency. And yet it's not an act of service to let people move blindly into a battleground without knowing that it's a battleground. So that's what I'm here to talk about. Okay. I don't know about all of you, but I feel a very, very distinct and palpable energy shift as we cross the threshold tonight into tomorrow into the final quarter of 2022. And ultimately, what I'm saying is, I think that we are headed into a particularly difficult and dark autumn and winter. The dark entities are stirring. So I shared over the summer a series of solo podcast episodes where, I talked about my memories of being a founding member of humanity eons ago and a creator being at a certain level and being able to see all of the levels of creation within this multiverse. I'm certainly not suggesting that I can see all the way up to God source creation, but I've been seeing a lot of stuff. And I talked about how this particular realm that exists within, a bubble that holds, to me, it's a 17-dimensional harmonic time matrix within this bubble that we know of as our universe. And within this universe, there are many galaxies, and within the galaxies are many star systems, and within the star systems are worlds, and on the worlds are us and other beings that are incarnating and have a connection to source and self-awareness. And I talked about how in this bubble, this universe bubble, it is encoded with an objective. So it's not just an open sandbox, it is an objective-based simulation, an objective-based realm, universe. And the story that is encoded here is a battle between the tension on the axis of what we would call good and evil, but I prefer to use the terms from the Law of One material, which I've never read, but I know it comes from the Law of One, which is service to self and service to other. Because I think that very accurately describes the axis of tension that is playing out. So I'm planting my flag in the acknowledgement of a battle that is happening. Even though it is not the whole and absolute truth, I can lift my consciousness higher than that, closer to source, and see that it is just one bubble of many, and that it is not, in the end, truthfully, we're all so okay. And yet I am sort of planting my flag in it, in the perception of this battle at a level that I had previously hesitated to do, because I'm aware that at a higher level we are okay. But at this level, it's fucking real. And this is the level that we're incarnated in and that we're dealing with. So, anyway, so we're in this battle. And some weeks ago, around the death of the queen, I felt this there was a great victory for the forces of light or the forces of service to others, service to the whole. It felt like a reclamation of the divine feminine, Sophianic consciousness, the divine mother consciousness. What it felt like was that an entire star system was, or maybe a planet, a realm, something, some big group, a very significant group, was rescued and reclaimed. They were being held in their own prison matrix, their own false prison matrix. It was not Earth, it's somewhere else. And they were rescued. And it was this beautiful, albeit short-lived feeling of ecstatic victory. It was a big deal, a very big deal. It could have been the death of the queen or the announced death of the queen, or it could have been something else. I don't know. But those two things went hand in hand. And what I felt following that, almost immediately following that, was a new level of frantic stirring of incensed fury from the service to self polarity or the dark or the evil. They are not going to take that loss in stride and just keep going. They are in retaliation mode, and I feel them very stirred up. I've been seeing it reflected in my private calls, both with my ongoing private clients and with the handful of Akashic readings I've been doing. And I've been seeing it play out in, people in real life. What it feels like is, like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones being all like, winter is coming. And also, it's not just like any old winter, it's like the Night Walkers are coming. And I'm not saying that the Night Walkers are coming, but that is how it feels. Like an extra hard autumn and winter season is approaching. And the reason that it's extra hard is because there are, it's like, yeah, the Dementors are stirring. The Night Walkers are marching. There are, you know, major demonics, minor demonics, waywards, tricksters, thought parasites, thought forms, so many different levels. There's a whole entire organization to the dark entity forces that are active at a renewed level. I'm sorry, even though this is my 11th attempt to do this, it's still really hard for me to talk about it. Okay, so the dark entities don't actually need weapons. What they do, all the way into the major demonics, they don't need armor. They don't need weapons. What they do is they access our active trauma that is stored and is playing out in the fourth dimensional astral plane. And they use that as ammunition against us. Meaning that if somebody has unmetabolized trauma, something happened to you, whether it's big trauma or small trauma, it doesn't matter. It could have just been a repeated, like a way that all the way from infancy that somebody responded to. Like, I often am wondering if I'm traumatizing William. I don't mean to, but he, oh man, he gets into everything. He gets into everything. And I catch myself and I catch Alex. We're both, we're just trying to parrot. We're trying to get dinner on the table and do the things. And we'll turn around and his nickname is Bougie. And we'll turn around and he's into something he's not supposed to. And we're like, oh, Bougie. And I wonder if that's traumatizing him, even though I love him so much. And it's a really low key, low level trauma, but he's hearing it all the way from his infancy. And it's so, y- like I try to not do it, but I catch myself. It's just a natural reaction to like, oh, you're creating more shit for me to deal with while I'm trying to deal with this and this and this. It's just a natural response, but I'm aware that this is influencing how he perceives himself in the world. And again, like I'm doing my best to not do it, but I'm using this as an illustration to say that trauma can be as subtle as that, as just being responded to by otherwise totally loving caregivers all the way from your infancy or your young childhood in a way that implies that you're a pain in the ass. That informs your perception of who you are in the world. So it can be huge traumas. People experience huge, massive traumas. People experience mid-level traumas. Like huge, massive trauma would be like, you know, somebody important to you dying, your house burning down, terminal diagnosis. Those are huge, massive traumas. Those are often catalysts for massive awakening. Mid-level traumas, losing your job and not knowing how you're going to pay your bills next month, or finding out that your spouse has been cheating on you. Those are mid-level traumas. Those are eventually catalysts for awakening, but they are hard to process. Low-level traumas, just being low-key treated in a certain way that informs your perception of who you are and what people think about you and your worthiness and all that stuff. So there's these different levels of trauma. And the reason I'm explaining this is because entities, if you haven't finished processing that, if you're not aware of it, if it's hanging around in the background, and we all have it, I have a low-level trauma, low to mid-level trauma that I'm dealing with right now. If it's hanging around in the background and you're not really aware of it, those are the things. That's what entities use as their weapons. They go right into you, right into your holographic field, pull out your trauma, and then harass you with it because you haven't finished processing it. And so you don't know how to deal with it and you feel re-traumatized, you feel triggered, all the things. You start making different choices. It lowers your frequency into, like fear, pain, abandonment, all the things that you haven't finished processing. And then you make different choices in your life out of that. You become totally a manipulatable puppet through your trauma. And again, like I'm saying you, but what I mean is we, because this 100% applies to me too. We're being held in a fourth dimensional astral prison of trauma. So the fourth dimension is the astral plane. And the astral plane is the dream space where we hold all of our stories play out. So we think that we're imprisoned in the 3D and that what we want to do is get out of the 3D, but that's not actually true. The 3D is a very beautiful place to be. If it weren't for the 4D astral prison, the 3D would be an absolutely enchanted and magical place. The fourth dimension is the ongoing nightmare. It is where all that unmetabolized trauma lives. It is, of course, like, we hold it in our body, but it's actually not. Sometimes people say that we store it in our body, but it's actually not stored in your body. It's stored in your astral body, and it affects your physical body. So what I mean is that if I write about William and he's, like I'm accidentally, inadvertently, low-key traumatizing my beautiful child, upsets me to think that that might be possible. But if I take the example of him, if he actually develops a story all the way from infancy that he's a pain in the ass, that story lives in the astral plane. That story is not a physical story. It is a thought form. It is a belief that resides in the astral plane. And around that story, he will make choices that reflect and maintain and preserve that story until he gets to a place, on his journey of a certain level of consciousness where he can l- deconstruct it and be like, oh, God, that was never real. Oh, my parents fucking adore me. And all it is that, they don't have any help in the house. And it's just the two of them trying their best to adult and take care of us. And they would just get exasperated. And that's all it is. And it doesn't actually mean anything about me. And I'm not a pain in the ass. Like there'll be a certain point in his life where he's able to do that if he chooses to do so. But up until then, he will end up sort of accidentally preserving that story. And that's what we do. But it lives in the astral. It isn't actually it isn't actually part of us. We're just connected to it. So in the 4D astral prison of trauma, we have these stories cycling around. And the stories inform the choices that we make, which inform the feedback that we get from like our manifestations and the things that we bring into our lives, and then we're like, oh God, like we use it to reinforce the story. It ends up being this like negative feedback loop. And that's where we're all trapped because that's where the false matrix mainframe actually exists. Because as long as we think that these stories are real and we super identify with them, then we're stuck playing out those stories. Well, the thing is that the stories are completely optional. They're totally arbitrary. The meaning that we create around anything. And maybe William won't. I mean, I know that I have given birth, like I contracted to use the Stargate of my womb to as an entry portal for extremely high consciousness, high dimensional starseed beings. So maybe William will not struggle with it. Maybe he'll just always know my mommy loves me and she's just a human, and that's all. Maybe he will be free of that story, and God, I hope so. But as long as we hold these stories in our field and we unconsciously or consciously interact with them and give it our belief, the story dictates who we are and the moves that we make in the world. And we hold ourselves into this extremely small version of who and what we are. And also culturally, we are not encouraged to do trauma work. Like in recent years, it's become more popular, but it's still like, it's not sexy. People don't want to do trauma work. I just had a personal call myself with one of my mentors, and some trauma came up, and I was kind of bummed. I'm not going to lie. I was like, but I want to get to the good stuff. I want to do the magic things. But I know better. And I know, like, oh, it's there. It's close to the surface. You gotta go into it, Amy. You have to do the work because amazing magic is gonna be revealed through it. But we're not, first of all, culturally, we're not encouraged to. There's still a lot of stigma. I know people in my life who refuse to go to counseling or therapy because there's a stigma around it. And then also, like, trauma work feels boring and shadow work feels like, oh God, like, and it's hard and it's very emotional. It's very exhausting to process all this stuff. And we just want to get to the good stuff. I personally just want to get to the good stuff. So I get it. Trauma work is not sexy. People don't want to do it. But the thing is that there's this whole, like, literally, the 40 astral plane is a fucking hot mess. It is full of generations upon generations upon generations of ancestral and lineage trauma. It is full of past lifetimes upon past lifetimes upon past lifetimes upon past lifetimes of individual soul trauma. It is full of trauma, like individual human trauma that has been accrued over a given lifetime, and it is full of our collective trauma. And it just has to get cleaned up. There's no way around it. That's what we have to do. That's what we're here to do. That's what a lot of us are contracted to do. It's what comes through a lot in people's Akashic readings when they want to know their soul purpose. And a lot of it is like, cleaning up the trauma. Like, and it sucks. It's not fun. It's not exciting. I mean, some people might get excited about it, but I know a lot of people really don't. But it has to get done. We have to clean up this 40 astral plane. We can't just abandon it. Like we can't just ascend and be like, oh, we're just gonna leave the astral plane as like our, gross toilet that never gets flushed and it's disgusting. Like we can't do that. There's a lot of pain. There are a lot of soul fragments. Basically, what trauma does is it fragments consciousness. So there are a lot of consciousness fragments hanging around in the fourth dimension that need to be reunited with the whole, like the entirety. Furthermore, our chakras end up being trauma vaults. So people, again, like I'll say, people talk about trauma being stored in the body. And what I find is that trauma actually tends to be stored the chakras that are connected to the astral body and other dimensions as well. But mostly the trauma lives in the astral, in the fourth dimension. And we hold so much trauma in our chakras. Oh my God, so much trauma. These beautiful energy centers are supposed to be portals and vortexes to other dimensions, like multiple expansive dimensions of like the most blissed out experiences, like what Ben described on the most recent episode of Third Eye Awakening when he had the 9 days of, like transcendence. That is what our chakras are supposed to be. But instead, they are vaults of trauma. And all of this is perfect fodder for the dark entities to be able to keep us imprisoned and manipulate us and use us. We're also moving into the eclipse season, which is in the sign of Scorpio this year. It was in Taurus earlier, and now it's going to be again in Scorpio. And I have a feeling those are going to be pretty intense eclipses as well. And I've been talking to my personal astrologer, Christina Luna, about it. But I'm not an astrologer, so I can't fully, articulate all of that. But it's another thing that supports my feelings that I've been having that we're going into a dark autumn. I feel that we're going to see on the world stage a lot of instability, a lot of fear, a lot of death, and a lot of chaos. This past week, the British pound bottomed out in the stock markets, or I guess I don't know if you could call it the stock market because it's not a stock. I don't know. Obviously, you can tell I'm not a financial expert, but I do understand that the value of the British pound just tanked in a way that has never been seen before. And this is one of the oldest fiat currencies and one of the highest value fiat currencies. So this is a huge, huge event. This is going to have ramifications on all of us. We also saw an attack. Whatever side it came from, it's neither here nor there. We saw an attack on a Russian pipeline that affects the fuel distribution to obviously like industry as well as individual homes. And it's just a further manifestation of this instability and this chaos, and which is obviously going to lead to fear. And we're seeing a ton, so many deaths. So much death is still happening. So we're moving into this dark season and it's intense. And literally it's taken me 11 fucking attempts to be able to get all of this out. And it can feel really scary to hear all of this stuff. But I want to remind you that this is literally what we incarnated for. Literally. Our job is to hold the frequency and be the light, even in a darkness that feels absolutely suffocating. And we have been training, preparing. And it's now time to go into battle at this level. I've been talking for, guess about 6 months now about the 12th dimensional Christ consciousness. I personally have been working on cultivating it and embodying it through I've been calling it a mastermind, but yesterday in conversation with somebody else, I realized like, oh, it's actually a mystery school. That's what it is. It's a mystery school and it's called 1212 because it's 12 dimensions of consciousness, 12 souls, 12 weeks, 12 months. And it is the Christ consciousness. And again, I'll emphasize, I don't go to church. I don't read the Bible. I might read the Bible. I don't know. I have nothing against it. I don't have anything against church or Christianity or the Bible. I just want to make it really clear that I am talking about a frequency of consciousness that is at its core, it is stewardship. It is love. It is like unconditional love. It is forgiveness and grace and charity and self-actualization. It is sovereignty. It is, man, it's so hard to put it into words. At its core, it's calling the bluff of the matrix. Christ consciousness is calling the bluff of the false matrix and calling the bluff of the simulation. It is the understanding that this is a matrix and it is a simulation and that we are fractal avatars of the God source prime creator consciousness, and that we create the simulation. We have been programmed to believe that we are victimized subjects of the simulation, destined to experience whatever misfortune the simulation brings to us, or whatever privilege we might be privileged enough to receive. But the truth is that we are the creators of the simulation. I don't know how many of us are called to embody the 12th dimensional consciousness, but I believe that there are a lot of us. Guess maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about my experience with like the Christos, the Christ consciousness and what it means to me. To me, Christ never came through church. Christ came to me through my children. I first truly knew Christ when my oldest son, Francis, was born. And as I raised him, the relationship that I had with his father was very unhealthy, very unstable, very painful. We loved each other so much, and yet we were both so unhealthy. And we had a very, very codependent, very toxic relationship. It was literally abusive. And when it ended, we were both devastated. And Francis was like my savior. I guess also I encountered Christ through John Frusciante too, which I shared on the September Energy Report. So I won't go over that again. But if you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend, even though September's over, it doesn't matter. It still carries very, very powerful codes to bring us forward. But Francis was so, I can't even put into words the being that he is. He's very special. Not because he's my son. He is, everybody comments on it. He is the divine masculine. And he saved me just by being alive. When I felt so low, I felt so lost, so alienated, spiritual awakening, no one to talk to, painful twin flame breakup, suicidal ideations. Just, I had entity attachments. Holy moly, and I didn't know it at that time. But the love that Francis brought into my heart was a Christ consciousness love. Because ultimately, what Christ consciousness is the ability to be in the darkness. Not that you have to be in the darkness, but it's the ability to be in the darkness, engulfed in pain, and to choose love, because the love is always there. So with Francis, I was able to choose love. And he was my reason for raising the bar for myself and just being the mother that he deserved, even though not a perfect mom. And then with Killian, you all know the story of Killian, so I won't go into great detail about it again. But of course, when he died, that was a darkness that felt suffocating. It was all encompassing. I remember being afraid that the darkness would pull me down. It was like being, tied to a stone, a big boulder or an anchor, and then like pushed overboard and just feeling like it's going to pull me down forever. Is there even a bottom to the ocean? Will I even ever reach a bottom? It was so intense. And yet Christ came to me again through Killian, as Killian. Like Christ came to me as Francis. Christ came to me as Killian. Christ came to me as John Frusciante. And the thing is, Christ is in me. But Christ came to me as Killian because even though the darkness felt suffocating and it was absolutely unavoidable, the love was stronger. The connection to the love was stronger. It's impossible for me to talk about Christ consciousness succinctly in this episode when I'm trying to talk about so much else. But we are, and if Christ is way too triggering for you, fine. It's fine. Call it 12-dimensional consciousness. It doesn't have to have anything to do with Christ. It is a level of consciousness where we are the love. And we feel it unconditionally for all beings, including all of the service to self and dark entities. It is the calling the bluff of the false matrix. It is the remembrance that we are in a simulation and that we are avatars if we choose it, so that we can become vessels of pure light and radiate with such brilliance and magnitude that the darkness cannot possibly ever even come close to snuffing it out. And in order to do so, we have to participate in clearing away the density and the trauma. And also, I have to say that from the 12D consciousness level, we begin finding the magic in the dark. Because as I said, the dark is comprised of and feeds off of the illusion of separation. That's why trauma has to be perpetuated, because it continues to fragment consciousness more and more and more. And as consciousness is fragmented and disconnected from itself, it cannot remember itself. And it identifies very deeply with, the tiny little individual aspect of consciousness fragmentation that it is. And yet each fragment of consciousness is, how do I even put it? It's like the most precious gift. It's the most precious treasure. It carries codes. It carries Akashic information. And when we understand that, we can go into these dark spaces, being present both with our own trauma and the collective trauma and the trauma of others and dark entities and all the things. And we find that this is a piece of us. It's a piece of the family that we are, a piece of the unity that got so separated and is in such a frequency of density and pain and reversal that it has become a distortion. And yet, you learn through the 12th dimensional consciousness how to correct those reversals, right those reversals, and clear the distortions and restore the original templating architecture. And you find, when you do that, it's like, oh my God, there aren't even words for it. The beauty. Again, come back to the example of Killian, and I continue to receive gifts from him. Even though he died 6 years ago, I'm, for example, going into all this, I'm like, wow, you prepared me for battle. Because the fear of losing a child was no joke, my worst fear. It was my worst fear. And I lived through it. He gave me that gift of being able to live through it and see that it's actually okay. And I actually survived. And actually, even though his body is gone, his consciousness remains. And more important than that, even greater than that, the love that we share remains. That is a gift. Not being afraid of life anymore because of having to face my worst nightmare. That is a gift. There's so many gifts. I found my magic. I found my psychic activation. I found the Akashic records. I found all of you. I started this podcast. I created Soul Space. Like, I've met so many people. The darkness of Killian's death has yielded infinite, infinite magic and gifts and treasures. So we can find the magic in the dark. And that doesn't mean that the dark is not painful. That's kind of like a characterizing feature of the darkness. We don't get to not experience the dark as dark. It's just that we know how to alchemize it. We become master alchemists. The Christ consciousness, the 12D consciousness is like, bring it, throw it at me. Whatever you got, I can handle it and alchemize it back into the light. It's not, and I mean, I'm not inviting in darkness. Let me tell you, I'm not opening my arms up and being like, all darkness come to me. But I'm saying like life, universe, I've got this. It's more of an internal strength of knowing, like, I don't have to hide. I don't have to be afraid. The dark things that come to me, I can receive them and alchemize them back into the light and recover so many treasures, so many gifts, so much magic, infinite magic. So I have these things that I want to invite you into that are going on right now. There's multiple levels to play at if you want, if the invitation speaks to you. The first one is a masterclass that I'm doing next week. It's a 2-part masterclass on Friday and Saturday. So that's October 7th and 8th. I am doing an Understanding Entities Part 2 masterclass, the Reptilian edition. So last year, I did a very popular masterclass with the brilliant and beautiful Heather Thomas, my priestess soul sister. What up, girl? I love you. We did a masterclass together where we shared our field research about entities. And I want to emphasize this, that my understanding of entities has almost nothing to do with researching other people's works. There are times when I read or listen to other people's works, and it's only when I'm divinely guided. Everything else comes from field research, meaning Akashic readings and like private mentorship client work. So Heather and I shared last year what we had learned about entities and how to deal with them and how to handle them. Last year, I had a bunch of psychic attacks. This year, I haven't so far. It's great. I think it's because I'm in the 12D consciousness, and there's just not, you become untouchable. Honestly, that's the thing too, is when you ascend and integrate into the 12th dimensional consciousness, you become literally untouchable. They don't even bother trying to fuck with you anymore because it doesn't work. There's no juice there for them. So last year, we shared everything we had learned about entities. That was Understanding Entities Part 1. This year, I'm doing Understanding Entities Part 2, Reptilian Edition, because I have learned a lot about reptilians, a lot. Again, through client work and Akashic readings and remote viewing and things like that. And I'm really excited to share what I've learned. It's not only going to be about reptilians, that's just like the catchy title that we've given it. It is honestly about dealing with entities, how to fortify yourself, protect yourself, how to identify an entity, how to handle an entity. Maybe you have a loved one who has an entity attachment. Maybe you're a teenager or your brother or your partner or your ex, or maybe you have an entity attachment. I had an entity attachment in my 20s. I figured out how to deal with. I don't think I got rid of it until 2011. How old was I then? Oh, till I turned 30. So really, this is a it's extremely high value master class. And I'm making it, as always, I make my master classes very affordable and accessible because I want you to be equipped with this information. Very important to me. Part two of the Understanding Entities Reptilian Edition masterclass. So the Saturday portion is I'm creating space to have like an Akashic group reading where I will I mean, I'm not going to be able to read everybody's Akashic records. There's no way. That will just like absolutely burn me out and probably make me sick. Like I'll get ill because it's too much for my body. It's too much for my channels. But I will intuitively allow myself to be guided to pick some people, and I will like read their field and identify any entities and give some guidance on how to deal with it. So it's kind of like a Q&A, but like practical application of how to use all this. If you did Understanding Entities last year with Heather and I, you automatically get Understanding Entities Reptilian Edition. If you did not do Understanding Entities last year and you want to sign up for Reptilian Edition, you automatically get Understanding Entities Part 1 with Amy and Heather. It's extremely generous. It's like, I mean, you get so much. You get so much information for a very low price. The next level up, if you want to play, is my signature program, Magic in the Dark. I have several signature programs, and this is one of them. And I'm combining it this year with the Psychic Activation course. So, Magic in the Dark is the whole process that I learned through, walking through the fire of Killian's death and how to be present with trauma and how to find the magic in the dark so that I literally am no longer afraid of life. It's extremely powerful. I'm so proud of it. And on top of the things that I already taught when I first ran it, I am also this year doing 7 live modules, one for each chakra, where I'm going to talk about the different types of trauma I have found stored in like the chakra trauma vaults. And we're also going to clear out each chakra. So those are going to be live. Everybody asks me, or every time I run anything, people are always in my messages asking if there will be a replay because they can't attend the time. There will always be a replay and you always get lifetime access. That's just how I work. So don't worry about it if you can't be there live. It doesn't matter. There are a lot of things I sign up for that I can't be there live because I'm busy doing all this stuff. So don't stress about that. Just understand the value. It's extremely high value. Learning how to process trauma so that you have a toolkit for every trauma that you ever experience, old ones, new ones, whatever. And you can use it to facilitate trauma clearing for others and live like chakra trauma clearing. And I'm pairing it this year with the psychic activation course because, like I said, people don't really want to do trauma work. I get it. A lot of people don't. Some people do, but a lot of people don't because just like me, we want to get to the good stuff. So this is my good stuff. This is where I'm like, I know a lot of you are in my field because you want to learn how to activate your psychic gifts. You cannot activate your psychic gifts effectively if you still have trauma. I believe that's why my psychic gifts came online so much stronger after Killian died because like with Killian, I dealt with my trauma. I cleared out a fucking lot of trauma, not just him, but like a lot of trauma. And that allowed so much information to come in because the pipes, so to speak, were no longer clogged with unmetabolized trauma. So they go really hand in hand. You learn how to clear out your trauma and you learn how to activate your psychic abilities. And so, on top of the 5 modules that I already taught in the past from the psychic activation course, that if you sign up, you get automatic access to, I'm also doing 7 live modules of chakra activation. So, in Magic in the Dark, we're going to clear the trauma out of the chakra vaults. And then we are going to activate and turn on the chakras when they're all sparkly and clean so that they become portals and vortexes for our psychic abilities and our accessing of our multidimensional realities. So, again, you get lifetime access. I'm running 7 live modules for both of those programs. They're being combined at a discount price, which is like honestly such an affordable and reasonable price for the amount of content that you get and you get lifetime access to. So I'm really excited about that. And I hope that you'll join me. I am so excited about it. Basically, I feel like I'm preparing like a whole bunch of indigo badass star seeds to be like, all right, guys, we're fucking clearing this shit out and we're bringing this stuff in. And like, we are going to have ourselves be ready to be like mad soldiers in a way, magic warriors to, I don't know. I don't like using war terms, but you know what I mean? Like, we are the ground troop. We are here to do these things. And I would like you to come let me show you how to do it. And if you're like, I want all of that and more, and I want to work with you, Amy, and I want everything that you teach. I want access to all the codes. I want to calibrate to 12 dimensional consciousness. I want to have my 12-strand DNA activated. I want to learn remote viewing. I want to do group entity work. I want to learn how to do grid work and open portals. I want to activate my plasma light body. I want to, what else? I want to do forgiveness, cord cutting, open my heart portal, all the things, all the things. I want to be in your inner circle. Then I have 1212, my mystery school. It is my inner circle. It's my favorite thing. It's it's so high level. When I get really profound downloads, that's the space that I'm bringing them is to the people in 1212 about the nature of reality, the things that we're doing, like finding our soul mission, our soul purpose. It's so much. How do I even put it into words? Just know that it is my favorite thing. And that's what we are working on is like connecting with our galactic aspects, connecting with our angelic aspects, our dragon aspects, our like the 17 chakra, 17 dimensional harmonic time matrix of this universe connecting in with our like anchoring into our 12th dimensional selves as like an embodied in the flesh being, becoming a channel for the light, bilocation, remote viewing, so many things, timeline creation. It's just basically the value of it is $5,000 a month. And that is not even close to what I charge. It is truly for those who are ready to go all in and become that which you incarnated to be here. So those are the things that I'm inviting you into. I hope that some of you will join me. Truthfully, I mean, I'm going to be really honest with you. I'm going to be really real. With everything that I create, I mean, to me, it's the most exciting stuff ever. I can't even, I'm incapable of doing something that is not about our mission. I'm so mission driven. I always have been. I have always known that I incarnated for a reason, and it is not to, build a shoe collection. Like I know that I'm here for a reason. And when I offer these things, please know that I offer them with a massive amount of vulnerability and love, that I create them with the belief that there are others like me who, for you, it's about showing up powerfully to fulfill the objective with which you incarnated in the first place. And sometimes I wonder if anybody even cares about that kind of stuff, although I know if you're listening to my podcast, you probably do. But truthfully, sometimes I wonder, is that what anybody even wants? There is a part of me that feels very vulnerable as I offer these because I'm inviting you into my space to share with you everything that I work on 24/7, even when I'm taking care of my kids, even like this is always going in the background. Is like, how do I serve? How do I serve? How do I prepare people? How do I help people clear trauma? How do I help people clarify their soul mission? We're here for a reason. We're here for a reason. What is it? And I'm inviting you in because I love you. And I'm inviting you in because I believe that I can be of service to you if you're ready for it. I hope you will join me in one of these different levels. I'm sure you're all going to wonder what time everything or when everything starts. I only mentioned it for the Understanding Entities Masterclass. If you sign up for Magic in the Dark and the Psychic Activation course, you get access to Magic in the Dark right away as soon as you sign up. The pre-recorded content that I recorded 2 years ago, which is extremely powerful. And then in mid-October, we will do the 7 live modules for the chakra clearing. The psychic activation course, you'll then get access to it on November 1st. And early in November, we will do the 7 live modules for the chakra activation. And if you sign up for 1212, you just automatically get access to everything. You get the master classes, you get Magic in the Dark, you get the psychic activation course, you get to be in Sorceress the Answer, you get all of the past calls from 1212s. I just give you so much value, and you get to come join us right away. I think that's all I have to say. Check out the links below for the signups, and I love you. We've got this. I think it's going to be a tough fall and winter, but I know that this is what we came for. We have the ability to weather this, and we're doing it for everybody. We're doing it for those people, those souls who they just can't do it yet. They are traumatized. They are scared. They are not awake, and we can't force them to be awake. We don't even need them to be awake. We just need to hold the light for them. Hold the light, hold the light, hold the light, be the light, be the light, be the light, and clear out that astral prison realm so that we can all be free and move into the expansion and the ascension that was divinely ordained and prophesied as our birthright, reclaiming our place as Christos, Sophia, God source, fractal creator beings. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here, and I will catch you on the next episode. Hey, my beautiful friend. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Third Eye Awakening. If you like what you heard and you want to go deeper, then head over to my website, amybelair.com, and check out my store, which is full of my past programs, courses, modules, masterclasses, light codes, etc. that are powerful and they are potent and they pack a punch. Not gonna lie, they are here to support you, accelerate you, and activate you in your spiritual awakening and psychic development journey. And/or if you want to stay in my most current, vibey, live energy, then I suggest that you head over to the Patreon and join me there. At the lowest tier level, which is only $5 a month, you get a secret bonus episode for every Third Eye Awakening episode that goes out. You also get a weekly energy report and light language activation, and you get a new moon and full moon emancipation transmission. So those are some fun ways to play, and I'll just remind you that I always have live programs going, so keep your eyes on my website, on my social media, and here on the podcast to find out what is the most current offering that I have. Either way, I love having you in my world, and I hope that I get to meet you and work with you soon.